Welcome to the Wolverine Digest podcast, the best spot for objective and authentic coverage of Michigan athletics. If you want open dialogue, honest opinions, and in-depth coverage of the maize and blue, this is the podcast for you. And now, here's your host, Brandon Brown, joined as always by Chris Breiler.
I was going to start by saying go blue.
Well, it is just an iPad touchscreen after all. So a little finger hovering over it a little too close, a little premature. I just want to start off by saying go blue, but you get two of them on a Friday night. How about that?
There you go. How about that?
It's the first time. I think that's the first time that's happened. A little premature on the old button there, but anyway. All right. Well, we're back. We're back on a Friday night. Just looking forward to a balmy Saturday afternoon tomorrow, Chris. I know you are. Let's get into that first before we get into all the meat and potatoes, everything. What's your preparation looking like right now for high 40s, wind, and I think a lot of rain, right? I know the percentages.
Yeah.
I think it's supposed to rain quite a bit as well.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, sweatshirt, coat, rain gear, all the normal fall Michigan essentials. I don't think it'll be too bad. I got pretty accustomed to it last year, so.
And every once in a while, it does make for some pretty cool shots. I mean, you'd rather not be out there in the cold and the rain, I guess, but
there's no doubt.
We'll see how it turns out. Do you have a do you have to cover the camera? I feel like did you try to do that at times last year?
Yeah, I've got a cover for it. It's kind of cumbersome. It makes things a lot more fucking difficult. But if you've got $6,000 or $7,000 worth of equipment, it helps protect that. So yeah, that's a good thing. Yeah. That's a good thing.
Yeah, it's not going to be ideal. I mean, Chris will be out there just braving the elements, and all of us. I don't know what word would you like to use for us tomorrow, Chris? Royalty.
I don't.
Royalty?
That's not where I was going to go, but sure, we can go with that.
The royalty will be up in the booth. The peasants will be down on the ground in the elements. No, that's never a fun thing, but it's kind of comes with the territory a little bit this time of year in Michigan, and hopefully it's not too bad. I mean, part of what we'll get into, I think some of the discussions today will be about how that will affect the actual game itself. But let's not forget about our warriors down there on the sidelines roaming with the photography equipment. Mm-hmm. It's not a lot of fun. So yeah, we'll see how that turns out tomorrow. I think it's supposed to be like all day, which kind of sucks. That's when it's real bad too. You just don't even get a break. It just continues on for the whole day. I don't know. We'll see what that ends up looking like. But all right. I mean, typically we started off right here with you're dumb, you're smart. I'm going to put the article up after we get off the podcast here with my 5 specific predictions for the game tomorrow. Are you ready to jump right into it, Chris? You got anything else? Anything else on your mind we need to clear before we get rolling here?
I don't think so. I don't have anything.
Ready to roll. Look, dude, here it is. I'm going to the well one more time, and this is the last damn time I'm predicting it. It's the last time, dude. I know you already know what I'm going to say. Tomorrow, Donovan Edwards will score a touchdown. I repeat, Donovan Edwards will score a touchdown. I mean, I know you don't want to call me dumb, but at this point, what do we think?
I don't know, man. It's a tough one. We're going into week 7 now. It hasn't happened yet. Law of averages would say, it's got to happen at some point this season. But I think just based on what's happened the first 6 weeks, to say that we've been saying this now. We said it week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, week 5, week 6. Here we are going into week 7. So I'll call you dumb for the sake of being able to call you dumb, just because it hasn't happened yet, and I'm not sure that it's going to happen tomorrow.
I know, man. It's crazy. I think I think the very first week out of the gate, I think I said that Donovan and Blake both will score a rushing, which just kind of felt like you could say that almost every week before we saw how things have played out. I mean, it was like, yeah, both of those guys will probably get in the end zone as often as the other, and it just has not. It just has not played out that way. So this is it. It's week 7. I'm not going to guess it again. If he doesn't do it tomorrow, I don't know when it'll happen, and I'm not going to guess it anymore. At some point, he will probably get into the end zone, but it won't be because I'm guessing it anymore on this segment to start our Friday show. I can't do it anymore. I can't do it anymore. All right, how about this one, though? How about this one? J.J. McCarthy will run for another touchdown. He had 2 of them last week in Minneapolis.
Yeah, I mean, I like it. I think, I think in Big Ten play, they've started to, take the shackles off a little bit, let him do what he does best, a little more of his game in terms of the running ability and what we've seen, against Nebraska and against Minnesota. And I think given the way the weather conditions are probably going to be tomorrow, you're going to see him, get out of the pocket and do a lot of things with his legs. So I would say probably a smart ball that we'll see him get in the end zone at least once using his legs. Yeah,
I went back and watched both of his touchdown runs against Minnesota. It didn't look like he had a chance to get in on either of them. And he just does this little shoulder dip thing and just hesitates for just a second. And he's got enough quicks and enough athleticism to get to the corner. And it's pretty impressive. I mean, he hasn't been running it a ton, but he has done it a little bit more over the last 2 to 3 games. And obviously he scored a touchdown, scored 2 last week. Did he have a rushing touchdown against Nebraska too? Oh yeah, the long one. Yeah, 20, like a 21-yarder right up the middle of the play. I think that was on a scramble play. But anyway, he's and Jim Harbaugh talked about it after the game too. He said if we really lined him up and had him run for speed, like he'd be in the 4.4s. And he's talked about that before, and he looks fast when he's out there running the ball.
I was just gonna say when you watching in the game against Minnesota on TV, and it's even when you kind of watch him in person a little bit, like it's very deceptive. He doesn't look as fast as I think he really is. Like you said, there were a couple runs against Minnesota, one in which I remember where for sure it looked like he was going to get tackled, and he somehow was able to get to the edge, turn the corner, and get to the end zone. He is deceptively fast, deceptively twitchy. I mean, I don't think he gets enough credit for how good of a runner he really is.
Yeah, I mean,
that's probably because you don't see it very often.
I was just going to say, he just doesn't do it that often, but you put those 2 touchdown runs on alone, and you're like, when he takes off and you pause it, you're like, there's no way he's scoring. And he scored on both of them. They were both the same way. He kind of stiff-armed a guy on the second one. Like I said, he does a little shoulder thing and kind of just hesitates for just enough time to get the defense off balance. Then, puts the pedal down, and he's got a lot of speed, man. He's kind of a long strider, and he's a pretty smooth runner. So, yeah, it just doesn't look like he's going that fast, but he doesn't get caught. He gets out of bounds whenever he tries to get out of bounds. Like I said, he got the corner of the end zone twice on Saturday in Minnesota. So yeah, I think like you said too, the weather could play a role here, and we'll see what that ends up looking like on tomorrow afternoon. But I think it kind of feels like we're having an issue, I think, here, Chris. I don't know if you see that or not. That's not what I wanted to do right there.
I pulled it off.
Okay.
Get it out of there.
All right. It said that the StreamYard lost connection with Facebook. I hope that's not the case. People out there watching on Facebook, let us know if there's an issue.
Yeah, for sure.
It says up top that we still have the green check mark, like it's connected, but I got a big error message that said it was disconnected. So we'll see what that
Looks
says.
Like it's good on my
side.
side.
All right. Good. All right. So I think JJ will be continue to be a threat running the ball as we're now into Big Ten play, and it's just looks like it's something that they're going to want to do. Number three, these 2 stats, we had articles up on them throughout this week. They're kind of peculiar stats. They're very specific, but we talked about how they're not cherry picked. They're not skewed. They're just really freaking impressive stats by Michigan. They are outscoring their opponents 76-0 in the third quarter of games. And they have not faced a snap inside their own 10-yard line in a goal-to-go situation, which is freaking crazy. I mean, and they haven't been giving up any big plays either. I mean, they just haven't been giving up many points, period. So I say that both of those trends will continue. They will not give up a point in the third quarter, and they will not face a snap inside their 10-yard line. Dumb or Smart. That's two incredibly hard things to do through 6 weeks, but they've managed to do it.
Yeah. Well, again, it's another thing that I think weather is going to play a factor in. Michigan has obviously been phenomenal coming out of halftime. You got to give Jesse Minter a ton of credit there for, the type of adjustments he's been able to make. It's not like they've really had to change a lot from what they've been doing in the first half. They haven't been getting burned, giving up a ton of points, but they're so damn effective coming out of halftime. And, on top of that, when you factor in what the weather is going to be like, I just don't think Indiana is going to be able to move the ball. I think this is probably going to be the first game where the Michigan defense posts a shutout. So I'm gonna call it Smart on both accounts. I don't think they're going to be running any plays from within the 10-yard line. And I don't think they score in the third quarter. I don't think they score in the fourth quarter. I don't think they score in the first or the second. So,
yeah, it's going to be – yeah, we'll get to that towards the end. When we get to our predictions, we talk about the scores that we picked and what we think it might look like. And, dude, I mean, Michigan's favored by almost 35 in this game, dude. That's wild for a third Big Ten conference game of the year with, having played other conference opponents. That's as big of a spread as I can ever remember. So, yeah, we'll see what that ends up playing out like on the scoreboard. But, yeah, and then you throw in the weather. Things are going to be – sometimes it's weird, though. Sometimes weather can, go the other way. It's like, well, Indiana never would have got that long play if it wasn't for a DB falling down in the rain or this or that. So, it can cause some weirdness in both directions, but we'll see how that plays out. Speaking of that, number 4 on my predictions for if I'm dumb or if I'm smart, I think Michigan will have another pick 6. They had 2 last week, including the second play of the game. Will Johnson took one back. Keon Sabb took one back. Mikey Sainers still had one earlier in the year. I mean, the Michigan is it's pretty impressive to have 2 in the same game. Michigan's had 3 all season. I think they're going to do it again. I think the weather's going to be weird. I think you get one weird hit on the quarterback or one overthrow, or like we saw last week, just a phenomenal play by 2 young DBs, and it's off to the races in the other direction. Michigan, another pick 6 tomorrow against Indiana.
Yeah, that's a hard one to predict. That
it is tough.
I do think they're going to force some turnovers. Getting another pick 6, would love to see it. But again, for the sake of being able to do so, I'm going to call you dumb just because they did it twice last weekend. If they were able to do it this weekend, it would be great. But weather, elements, law of averages keeps popping up ever since Jim Harbaugh brought that up. I've always been a big believer in law of averages. Just coming up as a young adult and how things play out. And so, yeah, I don't know. It's tough to do that from week to week. I'm going to say no, they don't, but I do think they force a couple turnovers on Saturday.
Yeah, I had just interception, and I'm like, that's not hard enough. That's probably going to happen. I mean, that feels predictable. Pick 6, maybe not, but again, trying to go out on a limb here, you could see it happening with the way the game might be played. Indiana might have to throw it a bunch more than they want to. The weather, the wind, we'll see how that plays out. And on the flip side, I don't do this very often, and I'm not doing this to be negative, but again, taking into consideration the way the game is going to be played, things that we might be able to see, and honestly, it gets hard to come up with 5 of these every week that aren't the same ones. So I flipped to the other side of the coin this week. I hope I'm wrong. Chris, call me dumb really aggressively, and maybe it will come true. A Michigan running back will lose a fumble tomorrow in the Big House. A Michigan running back will lose a fumble.
I'm going to say dumb. I mean, these guys have been pretty good with ball security. I don't see Blake Corum fumbling the ball. Don't see Khalil Mullings having it happen to him. And Donovan Edwards, again, just not somebody who typically fumbles the ball, turns the ball over much. One of the biggest things about the most impressive things about this team so far is how good they are with ball security, how few mistakes they make. Again, I know that the weather is going to lend itself towards, possibly making more mistakes on Saturday, but I think they've been planning for that, prepping for that all week. I don't think we're going to see a Michigan running back turn it over.
Yeah, I mean, that's not what they do. It's typically not what they do, but the weather, you would think that the weather might make them run it even a little more than they typically do. I mean, maybe we're wrong about that. I don't know how crazy it's going to be. It doesn't sound like it's going to be a monsoon, I don't think. I mean, I haven't been following the weather all that closely, but unless it's absolutely nuts out there with the weather, I mean, J.J. McCarthy's still going to be able to drop back and throw the ball. Receivers are still going to be able to run routes. But if they do up the carrying a little bit on the ground, that's just more opportunity for a wet ball to get punched out. Indiana could be in desperation mode a little bit. You never know. So I just threw it in there. We'll see if it happens. We have seen Khalil Mullings fumbled, in a key moment last year. It wasn't really his fault. I was going to actually ask, how do we score it? Like, let's say there's a miscommunication or a problem at the mesh point. Do I get credit for that if I predicted that a Michigan running back will lose a fumble, or is that on JJ?
Would Vegas give you credit for it?
I don't know. I don't know
Yeah,
who they.
no,
I think in fantasy football they typically give that to the quarterback, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I mean, if there's trouble with the exchange, I would put it more on the quarterback.
He's got the ball already, and it never quite makes it to the back, so that's probably more on the quarterback. But no, I mean, like I said, just with the tendency of the weather and maybe how the game is played out, if Michigan gets up by a lot, just run the ball a lot. Maybe you bring in another guy who hasn't carried it as much. I don't know if we'll see, a Tavi Dunlap or somebody else like that, a Leon Franklin. You never know. So, like I said, I hope I'm wrong. But again, just thinking about the game and trying to mix it up a little bit and come up with something. I don't think I've ever predicted that before. Decided I would throw it out there. So we'll see. Donovan Edwards to score a touchdown. J.J. McCarthy to run for a touchdown. Michigan continues those incredible stats. Scoreless third quarters for the defense and no snaps inside the 10-yard line. Michigan will have another pick six, and finally a Michigan running back will lose a fumble. So we'll see how that turns out. The game's noon tomorrow, early day. Going to feel a little sleepy in the morning with the darkness and the clouds and the rain, but yeah, we'll see how that ends up playing out. Chris, if you were going to do these, this is another thing. We do them on the same night as over-unders, which is basically like coming up with another 5 of them. What would you try to focus on? Do you think you'd go like more player specific, like team specific, opponents? Like, I just find myself, I feel like I'm doing the same things a lot. And again, I have with Donovan. I did with Colston Loveland. I usually do something with a sack. I didn't do that this time, but I don't know. It's we're at the halfway point only, and I feel like I'm running out of ideas.
Yeah, I don't know. I think a good mix of team and player specific is probably the way to go. It's the same with coming up with the over unders. You talk about will Donovan Edwards score a touchdown this week? Will JJ McCarthy, how many attempts this week will he play? It's Michigan's brand of football, I think, is pretty consistent to this point, to where the questions are almost going to be just as consistent. And so that's part of the good and bad, I guess, of covering a team that's very, very consistent in every way you look at them.
Yeah, that does make.
There's not really going to be many big surprises,
I know. That's been the script for 6 weeks. It's like, I mean, I've said it. They don't commit penalties. They don't make mistakes. They barely break a sweat. Starters are done in the third quarter. Yeah. They win by 30. Like, it's been that way all year long, and I don't think it'll change a whole hell of a lot tomorrow against Indiana. So yeah, we'll see how that ends up looking. Next up. This was kind of a weird one this week. I mean, you'll see what I mean when I get into it. But we've got Big Ten big game and Big Ten big lame, and neither of them I feel like are typically how these sections look. So, Chris, I'm anxious to get your take on the ones that I chose. The first one is Iowa at Wisconsin for Big Ten big game.
Yeah,
neither team's ranked, which is kind of surprising actually. Iowa's 5-1 and Wisconsin is 4-1. Neither of them are ranked in the top 25.
I remember distinctly we were talking during the Monday show, and I was, we were talking about ideal scenarios or how things would play out. And I remember specifically saying that, I was really hopeful that Michigan would face Iowa in the Big Ten championship game, and it doesn't look like that's going to happen. And for some odd reason, I thought Iowa was shitting the bed this year. And then I went back and looked at the numbers. I'm like, oh, okay, they're what? They're 4-1, 5-1, whatever the case is.
Yeah.
Playing for first place in the East Division. Not like that's a proud thing to stand on, but the East Division is what it is, and this game between Wisconsin and Iowa is going to be a big deal towards figuring out who it's going to be, because I think there's a pretty wide gap between Iowa, Wisconsin, and then the rest of the field in the East.
Yeah. So. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Iowa, Wisconsin doesn't sound like it'll be all that exciting. Although Wisconsin's playing a little different brand of football, obviously these days under Luke Fickell. Wisconsin.
Right, I apologize, West.
But yeah, we all knew what he meant. Wisconsin favored by 9.5. It's actually kind of a lot. I know Cade McNamara is hurt and out for the year, so they're down their starting quarterback. But yeah, Wisconsin favored by 9.5 at home. It's a 4:00 game. I don't know what the weather's supposed to be like over there in Madison. I would imagine it's not going to be awesome, but I could be wrong. But Wisconsin favored by 9.5. How do you see our Big Ten big game going? I mean, I also haven't watched a lot of these two teams this year, to be honest.
I'm just not. I don't have much confidence in Iowa to be able to score
Yeah.
points at all. I remember on the way back from the Nebraska game, listening to Iowa, Michigan State on the radio as much as we possibly could out there in God's country. Had to, finding a clear radio station out there was not easy, but it just seemed like they were. And I know they lost Cade McNamara that game, but it seemed like they were really struggling to move the ball, to get points when they needed points. And I just that's how I view Iowa. I think Camp Randall's a tough place. I think, Wisconsin's going to have the edge there. So what is it? It's Wisconsin favored.
Wisconsin favored by 9.5. Yeah. So 10-point win.
Yeah. I would take Wisconsin and to win outright.
Okay. Wisconsin to cover. That's a pretty big mark. Wisconsin, I haven't looked at a lot of them, a lot of their games. I don't know if Wisconsin's scoring a lot of points either. I know Iowa's not. Well, they have that clause in there that their offensive coordinator has to score at least 25 points a game, or he might be shit canned.
Okay,
it's Ferentz's son, which is interesting.
Fair enough.
But yeah, so and then you lose your starting quarterback, and they've never been an explosive team in the first place. So that one's a little bit tricky, but that is the biggest game. I mean, you can't say Michigan against Indiana when there's a 34-point spread is the biggest game. It's got to be that 5-1, 4-1 matchup, because there's just not a lot of other good matchups this weekend in the Big Ten. None of them. There is not a ranked matchup. I'm just looking at the rest of them. Well, let's get into the big lame first, just because I think it's kind of strange where it's at.
What about you? You're not going to give any love to Ohio State having to travel down to West Lafayette and play Purdue, where I know Purdue isn't very good, but
no,
I saw
I
some
can't get
stat
there
where it's like the last.
I know Purdue's been a giant killer for weirdly.
The last 8 head coaches for Ohio State have all lost a game in West Lafayette. I believe that was the stat that I saw, but. Urban Meyer went down there and lost. We saw Jim Tressel go down there and lose. I mean, we've seen it happen. So,
my rationale for that, Chris, because I did look at that. I'm far more interested in watching Michigan State at Rutgers just to see what that looks like. If Rutgers, if Michigan State has truly fallen apart, they're at 2-3, going to Piscataway to play Rutgers, who's 4-2. I'm much more interested in watching that
quarterback
game.
at that point. They're going to have. Who's the kid? What's the kid's name? Blonde-haired kid. Hauser.
Is it Hauser?
Hauser, I believe.
Hauser?
Caden Hauser?
Caden Hauser.
Catan Hauser? Something.
I think you're right about that. Yeah, so I'm more interested in watching that game than Iowa, Wisconsin. Probably more interested in watching Ohio State, Purdue, although that one could get ugly pretty quick. Yeah, Purdue's 2-4. I couldn't really go away from the 5-1, 4-1 record for the West. Like that makes it a pretty big game. On the flip side, Penn State hosting Massachusetts, favored by 42 points. Like what?
That's what you want to see in Week 7.
I just don't. Yeah, I mean, I know the scheduling is what it is. It must mean that Penn State did something earlier. I don't remember exactly why they would have that game right now. Did they play a really early conference game that I'm just not remembering?
They might have. I mean, I know Ohio State played Indiana right out of it. Penn State might have been let me check the schedule real quick.
Anyway, they're favored by 42. They haven't looked great over the last couple of weeks, so I can't imagine that a tune-up game against a cupcake like UMass and the Fighting Don Browns is really going to challenge them all that much. But obviously,
they played Illinois Week 3.
Okay, so a little earlier. So yeah, okay. Penn State, number 6 in the country, 5-0. You're not going to learn shit about them this week against UMass. So that's my lame game in the conference. I don't want to watch that at all. Like not one part of me.
Yeah, no, not an ideal game to watch. I mean, obviously you want to keep your eye on Penn State, just like the folks over in Columbus want to keep their eye on Michigan, and the folks over in Happy Valley want to keep their eye on Michigan. But it's hard to really gauge where those teams are at.
Yeah,
I mean, even this weekend, Michigan against Indiana. How much are you really going to learn about the Wolverines this weekend? It's they're the only team that is going to beat themselves until that Week 10 matchup. So. I mean, hopefully we can get back in time to catch a good chunk of the Iowa-Wisconsin game, because that's quite likely going to be whoever comes out of the East is going to be facing the winner of that game.
Yeah, I mean you're kind of looking at that with all of the big three in the East. You've got Michigan favored by 33 over Indiana, Penn State, as I just said, favored by 42 over Massachusetts, and Ohio State on the road is favored by 19 over Purdue. So like all three of the big teams are kind of walking into an easy matchup on paper this week, but you got to play them. I would expect Penn State to win by a ton. I think Michigan's going to win by a ton, and I probably would pick Ohio State to cover as well, 19. I don't know. Purdue's 2-4, man. They're not gonna give Ohio State much of a fit, I don't think. But I'm a little bit intrigued by the Michigan State Rutgers game. Chris, let's talk about it for a quick second. What's happening in that one? Michigan State falling to 2-4 in Piscataway?
I think so. I mean,
I think so too.
I think Rutgers. Rutgers isn't as bad as a lot of people like to think. We saw him in Ann Arbor. Certainly at the quarterback position, they got a guy there that can make some plays with the mobility, strong arm. Saw him make some incredible plays. I think on third down when they needed to convert. And I think Michigan State is a rudderless ship at this point. I think they're making the switch at quarterback to try to, generate some sort of spark within that team. But I don't think they have it this year. And I think you're going to be on the road. You're going to be tested once again. And I think Michigan State loses. And I think it's going to be another year that the Spartans don't make a bowl game. And people aren't really going to make a big deal out of it this time around because, the excuse is going to be Mel Tucker got fired. Everything kind of got thrown to the wind. But the reality is whether or not Mel Tucker was there or, was shit canned for, whatever supposedly happened some weeks back. The reality is they're not a good football team.
No,
they don't have a lot of studs. You look at the wide receivers, you look at who they got at the quarterback position, you look at their defense. They're just not a very good team. And I think Rutgers is going to give them all they can handle. And Michigan's got to go and play that team, a week after Saturday. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah. I just typed in Michigan State quarterback. Did they officially announce that it's Caden Hauser? Is he officially the guy?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so
well, that's I mean,
and
lose your head coach.
I'm looking at, and we were talking about Wisconsin, Iowa, and I'm looking at the remainder of, their football schedules. And if you're Wisconsin, obviously you got to face Iowa this weekend, but then beyond that, you've got Illinois, you've got Ohio State at home, which is obviously going to be a tough game. Indiana, Northwestern, Nebraska, Minnesota. If you're Iowa and you win this football game, you've got Minnesota, Northwestern, Rutgers, Illinois, Nebraska, which are all very winnable games. So I think for those two programs, outside of Wisconsin having to face Ohio State at home a couple weeks later, this is pretty much it. This is going to be their biggest game of the season, and it's going to decide who represents that West Division.
Yeah. It's a
Thank
big
God
one.
we're getting rid of the divisions, by the way.
It's a bit, man. I don't know what it is. I mean, I just see like Iowa, Wisconsin in my head. I'm like, turn it, just change the I don't want to watch it. I mean, I know it's a pretty big game, and you're right. The winner of that is probably the representative in the West, but I could just care less. I mean, whoever wins the East is going to march through that game like paper. And it's what we've seen every year. That's why the West has never won one. So, yeah, I don't know. Not one. Yeah, not one time. So, yeah, that'll be a big one for them. But in the grand scheme, I just don't care about it that much.
I mean, the other candidates in the West you've got Wisconsin, Iowa at the top, and then you've got Northwestern at 3-3, Minnesota at 3-3, Nebraska at 3-3, Purdue at 2-4, and Illinois at 2-4. So
how about Northwestern winning 3 games? I would have said I don't know what their over under was, but I think it was right around. I think it was like 2.5, and I think a lot of people were thinking like under
3-1 at home. Tough to go out there and win in Ryan Field, apparently.
Man, dude, and they have nobody. Talk about a team, without talent. They're bare out there. But all right, that's the Big Ten big game. Not a great one. Big Ten big game, kind of a weird one because it's an undefeated number 6 Penn State team, but taking on UMass at home, that's going to be a snoozer by halftime. That's on at 3:30 for those interested. Penn State favored by 42. All right, well, we're at the 30-minute mark. We've got 5 over-unders apiece. We might actually get done in about an hour today.
I think we will.
Maybe. It'd be pretty close. Usually these these aren't as long as our burning questions, are they? The over-unders don't take
not even close.
So I think we'll be good. All right, you want to kick us off, or you want me to get it started?
Let me get it started here, and we touched on it a little bit earlier in the show. I think JJ, I've seen I don't have the exact numbers in front of me. I've seen anywhere from 4 to 5, but either way, he hasn't played very many snaps in the fourth quarter all season long. So I've got his over-under at snaps in the fourth quarter on Saturday set at 4.5. Will he take more or less than 4.5 snaps in the fourth quarter on Saturday?
That's got to be less. It's got to be under. It's got to be under. This is their biggest spread of the season, meaning Michigan seems to be getting better. Indiana's not good. They're worse than both Minnesota and Nebraska, and it's in Ann Arbor. I mean, this is going to end up feeling like one of those non-conference games, which Michigan won, easily but modestly. They didn't ever even get into the 40-point range. We talked about that earlier in the year, but I think Michigan's just figuring it out right now. Things are starting to click a little more each week. Indiana's bad. Again, the weather can do a lot of different things. It could really it can amplify Michigan's strengths, or sometimes it can pull them back to the pack a little bit. I think at home, the way Michigan's designed and built, it will amplify. Things will be more difficult for Indiana. I think Michigan blows Indiana out tomorrow, and that means JJ's chilling in the third quarter again, probably.
Yeah, I mean, certainly a major factor is going to be the weather. The other factor is I think that the way that the weather is going to be just plays into what Michigan does best. The other thing I'm factoring in here is the fact that Michigan's QB2, Jack Tuttle, is probably going to get a lot of run on Saturday to play against his former team. So I'm guessing that Michigan's going to be up comfortably heading into the fourth quarter, and I think the entire fourth quarter is going to belong to Jack Tuttle. So I will certainly take the under on 4.5 snaps. I don't think JJ takes one in the fourth.
JJ gives way to King Tut, dude, to come in and run the team. Find Barner for a big touchdown, probably.
There you go. Show a thing or two against your former team. I mean, I'm sure there's no. It's not like I'm saying there's bad blood or anything there, but it's it's a fun thing to be able to go out and perform against the team you played for last year.
Yeah, we talked about that. I don't remember paying attention at all. But Ernest Hausman going back to Nebraska. I know he posted something on his social media like, a pretty like prominent pose in front of the huge background, in front of the huge scoreboard and stuff. So yeah, absolutely. It means something to those guys. And Jack Tuttle was at Indiana for a while, and so was AJ Barner. So yeah, that'll be interesting to watch. And I think you could be right. If Michigan's up by a lot, they're not going to play JJ. And why not let Tuttle go out there against his former teammates and show him what's up with his new garb on. All right, I've been doing this lately, Chris. I've been doing a pick'em during our over-under segment, and I kind of like it. It mixes it up just a little bit. It's not technically an over-under, but it's still focusing on a stat number. I'm going to throw it to you like this. More rushing yards tomorrow, or Kalel Mullings, not Blake Corum. Donovan Edwards or Kalel Mullings.
But you're not saying that either one of those two will have the most rushing yards in the NFL. You're just asking between the two.
Who gets the most out of those two guys?
I think it's going to be Mullings. I think it's going to be Mullings for a couple reasons. A, I think he's earned more reps, and I think we'll see that on Saturday. And I think, they're still going to do the same thing with Donovan, where it's kind of a hybrid thing. You split him out, you get him in the slot, you try to get him involved. Short yardage passing game, certainly on a day like on a rainy day like what we're going to see this weekend. But Mullings has been, I think he's averaging almost 7 yards a carry. I think it's over 6 yards a carry. Extremely efficient. And again, this type of game just sort of lends itself to what he does best. So I'm going to take Mullings for overall yards between Dono and Khalil. And, I'd love to be wrong on that one.
Yeah. I think it's like, I'm not a horse racing guy by any stretch of the imagination, but Mullings is a mutter. He's a mutter, dude. He's the big back. Give him the ball. Let him plow through some people late in the second half. Because I think you're right. I mean, I think the depth chart is still pretty much the same. It's going to be Blake. It's going to be Dono. He's going to be playing a kind of a hybrid role. But yeah, Mullings deserves a carry here in the first quarter, a couple in the second quarter. And then he can really be kind of like the guy in the third and fourth quarter, which he's been. I mean, I think Sharon Moore talked about it. I think they gave it to him like 7 times in a row a couple games ago, and he just walked right down the field. So
you know what, Marcus? Yeah. If you put a dark visor on Mullings and you switch him to number 32 and you make his shoulder pads just a little bit bigger, it certainly has feelings of the A train. There's no doubt about it. I like it. I like the
Is Mullings drippy enough for you, Chris? Is he drippy?
No. That's part of the problem. I think that's why he hasn't solidly established himself as RB2 at this point. There's not enough. There's no visor. There's no arm sleeve. There's no leg sleeve. Like, look at man, you're about to move into a prominent role here. The drip needs to to be adequate, and it's less than adequate right now. But
how do you feel
he is? He's
kind of a simple dude. Yeah.
I don't need all that bullshit. Just give me the ball and let me go smash some people.
How do you feel about his number? How do you feel about number 20 for Khalil?
I don't mind it, but I like Marcus said, like I like number 32. Put put a smoke dark visor on him a little bit, let him be the big bruiser that comes in. Like, I don't know. I think I'm a little too obsessed with Drip. I think I put too much value on Drip.
I think you got to be, and granted, he was playing linebacker, but you got to be real careful if you're playing running back and you put the number 20 on in the state of Michigan, because Barry Sandbag will ever be the epitome of what a running back is. And he just, the 20 just looked so at home on him that whenever another back has it on, I'm like, nah, dude, just take it.
You've also got former Michigan great Mike Hart, who wore the number 20.
There you go.
One of the best in Michigan history. So,
and obviously Mullings looks a lot different than both of those dudes. He's just so big and stretched out. But
he's got that A-train mold.
He's
put him a number in the 30s, give him a visor, a little more drip, leg sleeve, arm sleeve, something. Boom, RB2.
He's playing his ass off, and that's the most important part. But I'm with you. He could increase the drip just a little bit. All right, so we both went with Khalil. That's interesting. There's another no way in hell if you asked us that at the beginning of the season. Why are we even asking that question?
Yeah, well, let's stick with him for a little bit, because I didn't even realize this, but now that I'm looking at my list, that was one of my second questions. My second question does have to do with Khalil Mullings, and this is with total rushing yards we're going to see from him on Saturday. So this plays right in well with the question that you just asked. Let me see here. His career high was 46. I'm sorry. 46. Yeah, 46 rushing yards against Minnesota. If my number is correct there, it looked a little screwed up on my screen, but it looks like 46 is his career high. He got it last weekend against Minnesota. I've got his over-under set at 47.5 on Saturday. 47.5 yards for Khalil Mullings. Rain, wind, plenty of opportunity, possibly.
I think I'm going to take the over. I'm going to take the over. When you started kind of putting the words together, I'm not sure if I would have guessed that his career high was only 46. He had the touchdown run that was like 25 or something.
Let me double check. Yeah, I know it's in the 40s. Let me double check it just while you're thinking this through.
I still think I would take the over, because we've talked about it. The game script, the weather. Give it to the big back maybe 6, 8, 10 times in the third and fourth quarter. He doesn't have to do a whole hell of a lot with it.
47. I'm sorry, 47 at Minnesota. So 47.5. Obviously, take the over. That would put him at his career high.
I'll take the over by a little bit, maybe like 52, 54 yards, something like that. He breaks off another 20-yarder, and then he just grinds out another 6, 8 carries. I'll take the over. So
I mean, we're both feeling pretty high on Khalil Mullings this Saturday. Yeah, I think he's going to set a new career best. Certainly over 47.5. I could see him going over, potentially going over 60 yards, depending on how the game plays out. I just think we're going to see a lot of carries on Saturday, and I think he's going to have plenty of opportunity, as he should. He's earned it.
Yeah, no, that's a good number. Well, this is interesting then, because I went with the other method of offense, throwing the ball. Chris's, dare I say, favorite Wolverine of 2023, Roman Wilson. He's probably that guy for you, right? This year?
Yeah, I mean, outside of the, JJ, I think is obviously everybody's favorite.
Kind of the golden boy.
Yeah, we give him too much credit. Screw him. I'm going with Roman Wilson as my favorite player. All
right, so Roman Wilson, he's clearly JJ's favorite target. He's got 8 touchdowns on the year. He could do this in one play, but that's the thing. Is it going to be that way tomorrow with a little bit of wind and rain and maybe a focus on running the ball a little bit? Roman Wilson over under 44.5 yards receiving. It's not a big number. It's not a big number, but not. given the day tomorrow, I feel like it's debatable.
I'm going to say under really? Just because I don't think there's going to be. I don't think he's going to have a lot of receptions, and I don't think that there's going to be big explosive plays. So I think in order for him to get to that number, he would probably have to have 6 or 7 receptions Saturday, and I just don't think that's going to be the case. So I'll take the under.
See, that's where I'm a little. I think there will be at least one big play. I'm with you on the number of catches. I don't think he'll have a lot, but I think he'll, maybe it's one of those bubbles right out to him, and then he just kind of weaves his way up through. Indiana's not going to have the speed to run with him. Or if they do dial up, I don't know, 2 or 3 deep shots for the whole game, I would imagine one of them is going to be to him. So
Yeah.
I will take the over, but I'm with you. I think he's going to finish the day with like 3 or 4 catches. I just don't think they're going to spray it around that much. So it's going to be, you're probably right. It's going to be dependent on a big play. Either he gets it or he doesn't, and that's going to get him to that 45-yard mark. I'll take the over, though. I will be the supporter of Roman Wilson.
Okay.
How about that?
All right. I like it. I like it. We talked about this a little bit in the show. Michigan's third quarter dominance, haven't given up a point yet in the third quarter all season long. I've got Indiana's total points in the third quarter set at 2.5. And the reason I put it at 2.5 is because could get a field goal, could get a safety. You know, strange things could happen. So I felt like 2.5 was a good number.
Well, when we get to the final segment of the show where I give my prediction, this will make a lot of sense. I'm going under. Okay. It's not particularly close. That stat in the third quarter really is incredible. I just remember thinking about, man, Mike McDonald, that dude is so good at adjusting at halftime, and Jesse Minter might be better. He's phenomenal at it. And Jim Harbaugh has talked about that there's very clear evidence of it with that 76-0 mark in the third quarter. And really the whole second half until the backups come in. I mean, Michigan is lights out against just about everybody in the second half. So I'm going to take the under. It's probably not a surprise the way I'm talking. You can probably figure out my predicted score for the end of the game, but I'm taking the under. No points in the third quarter.
I've changed mine, by the way. I have changed my prediction just throughout the course of the day, thinking about this a little bit.
Okay. All right. Do you think they're going to do the third quarter deal?
No. Oh, not at all. I'm sorry. I didn't answer that. No,
you did not answer your own question, sir.
No, they will not score a point in the in the third quarter. And again, my change in the prediction, I think, will reflect that.
Okay. Yeah, I think Indiana's in for a long day, man. A long, long day.
Everybody in that stadium is going to be in for a long day.
Yeah, well, there is a little bit of that probably too.
Although the teams, they do seem to be going by.
Well, they're moving quicker.
Yeah, things are moving quicker. That's for sure.
They are moving quicker, so you might get out of there a little bit earlier than normal. This over under builds on my Roman Wilson prediction. Again, the weather, the rain, the script. Is JJ going to uncork anything? Are we going to see a big run broken off by one of the 2 running backs? Not that Khalil Mullings isn't capable, but if a back's going to get a big play, I would guess it would be Blake Corum or Donovan Edwards. But Michigan's longest gain on offense, Chris. Longest gain on offense, give it a thought, 35.5. Michigan's longest play from scrimmage, over under 35.5 in the elements tomorrow.
I'm going to go under. I don't think we're going to see any big, long, lengthy, explosive plays. I think it's going to be a lot of, 5-6 yard plays here and there, some bubble screens, maybe some slants. I think that's what we're going to see. And I think, certainly the Michigan offense is capable of it, but I am curious, we know it's going to rain. It's supposed to rain all day. It's supposed to be windy. Just how bad is it going to be? I have vision in my head of what it's going to look like. And if the weather looks like what I envision, then I'm comfortably going to go under.
Okay. I'm going to take the over again. It kind of goes back to my Roman Wilson prediction. If I think he's going to get to 45 yards, he might just need a 35-yard catch to do it if he doesn't catch very many balls. And they're going to be running the ball. I mean, it's not hard for Blake Corum or Donovan Edwards to pop off a 40-yarder. They've done it many, many times in their careers. Maybe not so many times this year, but they both have that capability. We know that. So I'm going to take the over. 35.5, 36-yard play is not that huge. I know the elements are going to be a little bit to deal with, but I'm still going to take the over. So I'm seeing a little bit more of an explosive game than you are, but I could very easily see this one getting a little bit squirrely because I didn't realize it was going to be that windy. Somebody up there just said like 25 mile an hour gusts. Yeah, that's pretty substantial. I don't know if I
you're
know.
Not gonna, even if you're JJ, you're not really going to uncork it, in 25 mile an hour winds and be very successful.
That's tricky. I'll stick with what I said. Roman Wilson over 44.5 yards receiving. Michigan's longest play over 35.5.
I like it. Let's go to the scoreboard. This one's going to be the over-under for halftime lead by the Wolverines. Do they go into the half with a lead over or under 17.5 points?
Over. I was like,
Over. Okay.
as you were asking, I was thinking like maybe 28, 24, maybe even 31 if they get.
Wow. Okay.
Field goal might not be in the cards either if the wind is blowing around like that. But
Yeah.
I just think Michigan's gonna I'll be surprised if they get stopped on a series. Like I just think they're gonna be able to do whatever they want. I know you get one bad play on first or second down, you're probably punting the ball away because third and long is really tough when it's windy and rainy and stuff like that. So they'll have to avoid those third and long situations, which Michigan's really good at anyway. So I'll take the over. Yeah, I think they're gonna easily be into the 20s by halftime.
You know what? I'll take the over as well. I think you make a good point. I'm not sure that based on how I think the offense is going to look on Saturday, that Indiana is going to be able to stop it. It's really just a matter of how many offensive possessions does Michigan get in the first half. I think that's really going to dictate what the lead is going to be, but I'll still take the over on 17.5.
That's a fair point. We've talked about that too, how the new clock rules have, stolen a possession or two or three from a team like Michigan.
Dude, it's a realistic possibility that Michigan gets 4 possessions in the first half. You know what I mean? Like that's the way these games have gone.
Ooh, that almost makes me rethink. If they score on 3, they're over it. So I'll still take the over. I'll still take the over. But yeah, that is. When I heard that clock rule at the beginning of the year, I really thought like you're not even going to notice that. Like, well, there's timeouts and there's TV timeouts and incomplete passes, and it's going to be fine. But it's speeding up the game, and the players have talked about that. So yeah, that'll be interesting to track tomorrow. We've talked about this, man. One of the reasons Michigan has been so good, one of the reasons they are viewed as one of the most complete teams. But again, in the weather, guy slips and falls, trips and falls. Nobody wants to have a lookout block for their prized quarterback. Maybe you grab a jersey on the way down to the field. Michigan penalties, dude. Over, under. They've been – how many do they have on the year? I think you said it. Is it 2 or 1?
14 penalties on the season. They've had
I thought it was way less than that.
No. Michigan's been penalized 14 times over 6 weeks. They've had 1 penalty over the last 2 weeks.
Okay, I thought it was way less than that. Well, even still, they've been very disciplined. I have the over under set for Michigan penalties at 1.5.
We're talking offensively and defensively combined.
Total penalties in the game. Yep. I could have swore it was less than that. I probably would have changed my number a little bit, but I'll leave it. I'll leave it up there.
Yeah, because I think the next closest is 18.
Yeah. So okay, Michigan is number 1 in the country with 14 penalties. So that's worth noting.
Yep.
Actually, that's not that bad of a number. It's like 2 a game. So yeah, that 1.5 isn't actually that bad of a number. We'll roll with it. 1.5 penalties.
I'll go over again. Just weather conditions. You're kind of battling the elements. You start to slip up a little bit. Maybe make one more mental mistake than you would have otherwise. So I'll take the over. But if it is the over, it's 2. I don't think it gets beyond that. I don't think we start to see Michigan get sloppy on Saturday. I think they've reached a point now where they know who they are. They understand what the offense is, what the defense is, and again, they're the most disciplined team in the country. And I don't think we're going to see that go away on Saturday.
So if I had done better homework, I probably would have cranked that up. I probably would have only put it up by 1. I probably would have said 2.5, and that might have changed your answer. I don't know. Maybe that would have been an under, but it
would have been an under on 2.5. Yeah,
I will also take the over at 1.5. Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, it's you slip a little bit and you blast into the quarterback. It's easy to get that. A DB, has one misstep on a wet field and you hold it. It's pretty easy to get a penalty. It's pretty incredible that they've only had 14. So I'll take the over on 1.5, but yeah, it's probably capped at like 2 or 3. They just don't do it very often.
Yeah. I mentioned this guy a little bit earlier in the show, and we talked about his partner, Jack Tuttle and AJ Barner. So this is going to be a 2-parter for my over under. I've got Jack Tuttle completions set at 5.5 on Saturday, and part B will be AJ Barner receptions at 2.5. So I've got 5.5 completions for Jack Tuttle, which are all going to have to come in the fourth quarter. Maybe he might even get some run in the third, depending on how bad it is. And AJ Barner at 2.5 receptions. 5.5 Tuttle, 2.5 Barner.
So Barner's 2.5 is the whole game, not 2.5 from Tuttle.
2.5 the whole game, correct.
Okay. I will take the over on Barner. I will take the over on Barner. I'll say he'll grab 3. I think he'll grab 3. Big body tight end like that in this kind of game. He just sits down in the zone a couple times, chuck it to him, easy pickup. I'll take 3 catches for Barner. I will take the under for Tuttle. I just think if he's in, it's going to be lots of running the ball. They'll run, third down, throw, and see what happens. I just don't think he gets to I just don't think he gets to that number. That was completions, not attempts.
Yeah, completions.
I think he's going to be closer to that ballpark for attempts, maybe. So, yeah, I will take the under on completions for 5.5.
I'm going to roll the dice, Brandon. I'm going to take the over on Jack Tuttle at 5.5 in the fourth quarter. And I'm going to take the under on AJ Barner at 2.5. I'm going to give him 2 receptions on Saturday. But I think they're going to let Jack Tuttle sling it around a little bit. I think he's going to have at least an entire fourth quarter to himself. I know that Michigan isn't going to get out of what it is they do just for one particular player and because that player used to play for another team. But I do think Jack Tuttle is going to have the opportunity to showcase his talents a little bit on Saturday. So I'll take the over. I think he has 6 completions.
We've talked, there's the comment right there. We've talked about this before. Jim Harbaugh seems to like to do this for guys in that setting. When Roman Wilson played against Hawaii, this little coming out party for him last year. I remember a few years back, it was Sione Huma when Utah came to town. He was a Utah kid. They kind of let him carry it a few more times. I think he scored a touchdown or 2 in that game. A whole bunch of dudes from New Jersey when Michigan routed Rutgers 78-0.
Yeah.
So he's got a track record of doing this kind of thing for guys against their former team or in their home state or whatever the case may be. You might be onto something there, Chris. That'd be interesting. Like, I don't think you could even make a bet on Jack Tuttle, but it'd be interesting if you could. We got a little inside scoop here from Chris Breiler, I think. Let the bookies know. Let the sharps know. He knows what's going on. But you might be right. I'll still take the under. I just don't think they're going to need to throw it that much if he gets in the game. But, Harbaugh might let him play. He might let him sling it around a little bit. We'll see.
Take the shackles off a little bit. Let him throw it.
All right. I did say that Michigan in my You're Dumb, You're Smart segment, that Michigan will have a pick 6. So that's one takeaway. I'm setting the over-under for Michigan takeaways at 2.5. 2.5. That's picks, fumbles, muff punts, whatever it might be. Not downs, not turnovers on downs, but takeaways.
I'm going to take the under. I'm right at 2. Just because I don't think you're going to see Indiana do anything too crazy on Saturday. I think they're going to really try to protect the football. I think because of the way the weather is going to be, you're not going to see the quarterback drop back and try to force the issue a little bit. I think it is what it is. You're going to have to go out, line up against the Wolverines and try to run the ball and try to make something happen on the ground. And I think that's really going to be the reality of what they face on Saturday. And because of that, I don't think they're going to make too many mistakes. But I certainly see a situation where somebody gets a pick and Indiana puts the ball on the ground, fumbles it. So give me 2. Take the under.
You make a really good point, actually. Indiana knows that the only way they have a snowball's chance in hell is to literally play a perfect game. Yeah. Perfect. No penalties, no turnovers, execute, don't miss blocks, don't miss open field. They have to be perfect. They're not going to be. And because of that, I think they're going to press. I think you're going to see an overthrow. I think you're going to see a quarterback in the grass try to get rid of it, or maybe it gets his arm hit. I'm taking the over, damn it. I'm taking a sloppy Saturday for the Hoosiers. I think they're gonna put it on the turf. I think they're gonna throw a pick or 2. I think one of them is going back to the barn. And give me the over. Give me the over on 2.5 takeaways from it. Like 2 and 3 is all. Like I think in any weather, like that's pretty much like isn't that like the number? Like 2 seems very realistic. 3 is like I don't know. That's not gonna happen.
Yeah, but, unless you're facing a team like Michigan, then if the over-under is 1.5, I'm taking the under.
Yeah, that's fair. I'll take the over, though. I think Michigan's going to get after it. Are we done?
We're done. That was
We're
it.
Done. 5 over-unders in the dude.
That was
53 minutes. This is an efficient. Did we miss a segment?
It was much like JJ McCarthy. Efficient, direct, to the point. Great footwork.
Great footwork. Speaking of footwork, had to jog, a brisk jog from 5 or 6 houses down in my neighborhood the other day. Gassed.
Yeah.
So tired. So my lungs were burning. I had a hoodie on.
Were you running from an animal? What was happening?
No, do you want the whole story? It's actually pretty funny. Buddy of mine had to move my car. Buddy of mine had to move my car, left the lights on, killed it, so it was dead. Got it jumped the night before, it was fine. Went out, let it run for a while, started it, turned it off, started it. It was like, okay, cool. Go out the next day to get in it, it's dead again. Nobody's here. Had to go get my kid from school. So I was walking around the neighborhood trying to find somebody out and about that I could just be like, hey, can you just bring your vehicle down here so I can get a jump real quick? You know, they were doing some, it wasn't even the people that lived there. They were working on the person's house. So the guy jumps in his truck. So we take off from the same point. He's in a vehicle. I'm on foot. I mean, I'm hoofing it pretty good. And it was, we got there and it was hard to speak. That way. It was hard to speak to the guy and let him know what was going on and why I needed to do what I needed to do. But we made it. I'm alive and well. The lungs were burning though. There's no doubt about it. It was probably over 100 yards. I mean, it was down the street, but I mean, we're talking a 40% clip, maybe. I wasn't running that hard. And it was like 50 out. I had a hoodie on, just sweating. I felt like you on the sidelines. It didn't take much happening.
Yeah.
Will you sweat tomorrow? In the cold?
No, I think that time has passed, unfortunately. Or fortunately.
It's feeling pretty brisk out there these days.
It's feeling pretty damn good. I think the days of sweating on the sideline, at least for this year, are over.
And by the way, I see people bringing it up again. Go to YouTube and watch people running 15 miles an hour. Not that impressive. Not that impressive. I'm just going to put it out there. Dudes on there clocking 18, 19, 20, 21 pretty easily. Your boy's hitting 15. I'm hitting 15. Chris, I think you're hitting 15. I think we both can do it.
We're going to find out. We will find out.
I still think it's hilarious that you were like, no equipment. No equipment.
There will be no equipment.
A treadmill that tracks it. That's the way to do it.
It will be foot to earth. That's how we're going to do it.
I got to touch turf. I got to touch the ground. Oh, boy. All right, well, there's the show. Early start for everybody today. Tomorrow we'll be up at the stadium at 10-ish. I think Chris was saying I don't want to have extra time out there tonight. No need for it. No
I'm good.
need. Trent and I just want to get up there and eat some sausages, dude. That's all we want. Drink a couple diesels, get settled in.
It's like checking into a hotel for you two.
It's exactly what it's like. You guys got those free cookies on the counter? Where are those at? You got them? Anyway. All right, we'll see you guys tomorrow afternoon. Michigan takes on Indiana at noon. We will see you, I don't know, what time? 3:30? About 3:30. Keep it locked in.